Here we go. All right. I am here today with Michael Castrogiovanni. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ian.
I'm excited to dive into this very interesting modality that you created. And I've experienced it myself, and it's really unique in the kettlebell world, and it's far more than a workout. I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
Yeah. So the name of the modality is Kettlebell Partner Passing, right? And just to set the stage, Michael, could you just tell me a little bit high level, what is Kettlebell Partner Passing?
High level as far as like the physical practice, or like, are we
Yeah,
talking? Okay.
yeah.
Uh, High level is what we call freestyle, and that's where two high level practitioners who have learned the basics are able to basically freeform. So it's similar to jazz. Um, there's no script. There's no set idea of how you're going to move or what you're going to throw, and you just kind of go with the moment, get caught up in the flow, and see what turns out. And that's sort of the high end level of it. That's actually very high end. And then of course you can transition into multiple bells, so using 2 bells, 3 bells, and 4 bells. um, I personally think that freestyle is higher level because there's a lot more that you can do with it. um, Multiple bell is challenging in its own right, but um, freestyle is sort of top of the line.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So it's two people,
Mhm.
and according to your Instagram, sometimes you can throw in a third, or maybe more.
Sometimes third, fourth, fifth. So you can
Yeah.
do. Well, there is also multi partner, which um, again is also high level, but um, there's so much to do with freestyle and multi bell. Adding another person in is sort of like way down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. And
You could do
you're you're chucking kettlebells at each other.
pretty much, man. You're throwing them at each other, but you're also communicating on a higher level than just tossing iron around. Um,
Yeah.
the iron tossing is definitely a big part of the modality, because it's what puts you in sort of that state of fear that allows you to sort of bring your full focus to the moment. Um, so without the iron flying at you, it doesn't have quite the uh, same power. But yeah, it's throwing iron, it's slanging iron, and doing it in a way that is as safe as possible. Obviously, you're throwing a cannonball at one another, but being able to be on the same page, to sync up, to harmonize, to be able to communicate verbally, non-verbally, and on higher levels that maybe are even beyond that. So if you've ever played a sport, or for anybody who's played a sport, especially a team sport, when you get into the zone, it's almost like your teammates know where to be, when to be there, without you having to, you know, tell them. They just sort of read you.
Hmm.
They can feel the energy of where the momentum's going, and then they just get themselves there, and the play is made. It's very similar in kettlebell partner passing. It's a very similar to being in the zone in a team sport, but um, you're not playing against another team. You're working together to accomplish a common goal.
It sounds very far from using kettlebells in a traditional gym environment.
Yeah, I mean, I have thrown bells in gyms, uh, but it's definitely better done outdoors, and it's designed that way. It's designed to be done in nature, to not just you know vibe with your partner, but to vibe with your landscape, to connect with your environment. Um,
Mm.
it's cool to do it in a gym. It's definitely a different vibe, but you have to be much more careful, and there's a lot more you have to consider when doing it indoors, i.e., other people, equipment, windows, things of that nature.
Yeah. So it was, it's, there's something so unique here. I'm not sure people could fully grasp it without having experienced it.
Yeah.
And it was so unique that it was actually, you were highlighted in Scott Carney's recent book called The Wedge.
Yeah,
Could you speak to that and like how that fit into the book?
sure. Would you like a little bit of the sort of the backstory of how we
Yeah.
connected, or do you want to know more about just like how I think the wedge or how kettlebell partner passing fits into the wedge, or a little of both? Or
Let's do how kettlebell partner passing fits into the wedge.
okay, well, my understanding of the wedge, which is pretty limited, is that it's how you separate sort of the response of what's going on around you from sort of your emotional connection to it. So being able to create a wedge between those two things,
Mhm.
and being able to sort of remain calm, sort of in the face of fear, or in the face of uncertainty. And the way that I see the system that I've created fitting into that is that you have to be able to bring yourself into the present moment with your fears, with your concerns, with your worries, and show up. And you're doing that with another person in front of you. A lot of times when we confront our fears, we're by ourselves, or maybe we're, you know, with a close friend. But usually, uh, we're not confronting our fears directly with another human being as our witnesses. And I think that puts you in sort of a heightened state of sort of emotional turmoil, in that it asks you to be vulnerable. And I think when we're vulnerable, um, there's a couple responses. One is, we want to get out of there. Two is we don't know what to do, and three is you kind of lean into it and you go, okay, well, I'm gonna experience this to its fullest. And I think when you're I know when you're throwing a kettlebell with somebody, a relationship starts to form with yourself and with that person that allows you to sort of transcend that and to move into a more mutual space, and to be able to sort of share the burden of an emotional stress that could potentially sideline you, or make you want to quit. And um, the way I see it is, it's a way to stand for another human being and allow another human being to stand for you, and to give you their full attention, and to basically say, hey, it's okay to be uncomfortable, it's okay to be afraid. I'm not going to attack you in this moment of your fear. I'm actually going to be an active participant with it, and I'm going to help you through it, not by anything that I do, but more by just being present for you, just showing up. And I think you can have wedge type experiences on your own, which I think is extremely powerful because it shows you how to move through uncomfortable situations. But I think the reality of where we are in today's day and age is we need to work with one another. And I think our biggest fears are, well, at least my biggest fears are, if I'm working with somebody, is it going to be synergistic? Is it going to be mutual? Is there going to be some form of, um, you know, uh, abuse or taking advantage? And I think the business world teaches that, hey, this is what we do. We just manipulate, take advantage, get in where we can, versus like, no, how do we actually help each other get better? How do we actually help one another achieve evolution of not just finance, but
Mm.
of personal well-being, of um, personal growth, of relating, you know? Uh, so I don't know. I think I kind of went off on a bit of a tangent there, but
No, I
uh,
like it.
to answer your question directly, I think it puts you in a very unique type of situation that forces you to confront uncomfortable circumstances.
Yeah. Um, I resonated with a lot of that. So You mentioned typically, or at least it's not uncommon, when people feel vulnerable or somehow exposed, it's not uncommon to retreat
Right.
and isolate.
Yeah.
But you're creating an environment with built-in vulnerability,
Yes.
built-in danger, and built-in
Intimacy.
su- intimacy
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Through.
support.
Yeah.
I, we're both in this vulnerable situation together and
Right.
danger, and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
That sounds powerful.
It is powerful. It's uncomfortable. But that's part of it. Like physical fitness is great. Getting strong is great. But if we can't apply it in relationship, is it really making us that much stronger?
Yeah, it sounds like last year I was introduced to a phrase called cognitive fitness,
Hmm. Tell me.
and this sounds like this is flexing that muscle.
Hmm. Can you tell me more about cognitive fitness? Because I
Yeah,
had never heard this term.
yeah. Cognitive fitness was used to describe um, a school of coaching which focuses on language,
Hmm.
and it's a style of coaching that I do myself. The school is called Enlifted Coaches, and whereas food impacts your physiology through diet, exercise impacts your physiology, allows you to build muscle. Language is the main MO for this for their form of cognitive fitness. Just drilling into different types of language, different types of words, phrasings, and stories that basically is your operating system.
Hmm.
So through their program, they're creating cognitive resilience just through language. But I see this, uh, you're still confronting the vulnerability, some emotion, some fight and flight. I see
Hmm.
this working the same muscle.
Yeah, maybe
That
like, go ahead.
I was just going to say if that answered your question.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe what we're talking about with kettlebell partner passing is maybe like a nonverbal version of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool, man.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
How did this get started?
Well, in 2005, 2004, um, I was presenting kettlebells at the National Strength and Conditioning Association,
Mm-hmm.
and I had invited Pavel and John Duquesne to join me. And Brett Jones, who is now, I don't know what his role is in Strong First, but he he caught wind of it and asked if he could come, and I said absolutely, more the merrier. And we did such a good job that weekend of presenting that Pavel's like, hey, why don't you guys do a video? And so we did kettlebell basics for strength coaches and personal trainers in 2005. And on the set of that, I said to Brett, I was like, hey man, what do you think about like throwing this kettlebell back and forth? And he looked at me, and Brett, being a not one to shy away from slang and weight, said sure. So we threw the bell back and forth, and I was just like, holy shit, this is cool. So that was the inception of it. And then yeah, I just pretty much anytime I could find somebody who would be willing to let me throw a kettlebell at them, which is really difficult, um, I would ask them, hey, I do this thing, like I really want to explore it and develop it and grow it. I got better at my sales pitch over time, but yeah, anybody who would throw with me, I started throwing with them. And then I met a gentleman in LA at a Steve Cotter seminar named Robert McKee, and he worked at Gold's Gym in Venice. And he was really, really instrumental. We spent about a year just really hammering down like the basic patterns. And then he unfortunately passed away. And so I kind of was at a loss and didn't really know where to go from there. And I had helped at a RKC certification in San Jose. Ended up meeting a guy by the name of Blair Ferguson, and turns out he was my neighbor in LA at the time, like 2 streets over. And I told him what I was up to, and he was totally on board. So I spent the next like year and a half, 2 years with him, just exploring all the patterns and the different possibilities, and developing it and growing it and trying to figure out, like, what can we do with this thing. And then eventually I started doing some filming, and I had a videographer by the name of Gennaro Strangis, who was also a physical specimen, and started learning the passing with us. And he actually came up with freestyle. He's like, what if we move while we're doing this? And I was like, brilliant, let's do it. And so then we started doing it, and then it was like the next several years just figuring out all the different ways to do freestyle, and a lot of trial and error. And then let's see, where do we go from there? Went into multi-bell stuff and just kept expanding. And let's see, that was probably back in 2009. And then 2012, so between 2009 and 2012 I was just learning about it, just practicing it. And then I moved up to the monastery in 2012, and that was like a good 3 years of really just like honing in on like the deeper meaning of what kettlebell partner passing was about. Why was I learning it? What was I doing with it? And after that I decided this. So 2012, 2016 I did my first workshop, or no, it was 2017 I did my first workshop in San Diego, and then I just started pushing from there. And building it ever since.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned, and I was at one of those workshops.
Yeah. You're at one of the ones in Rancho Cucamonga.
Yeah.
With what's his name? Who else was there?
Mike.
Yeah.
Vischer.
Yeah. Vischer, and well, he put it on, and he's actually now one of the instructors. Which who would have thought? Everything just kind of. I met him in 2007 at it was a MMA convention in Anaheim, which was kind of just something that like I got invited to by, I don't know if you know who Alex King is, but he used to, I don't know if he still does, but he used to own Kettlebells USA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was like, hey, you want to come to this convention? And I was like, sure, I'll come, whatever. And so I went, and he's like, I can't pay you, but I can give you this 124-pound kettlebell. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. And that was the weekend I met Mike Vischer. And and then he resurfaced, and he was at the very first workshop in San Diego, and then he wanted to learn more, and he kept coming, and eventually I was like, hey, you want to put on a workshop by you instead of traveling down to San Diego all the time? And he said, sure. And then that's kind of.
Have you passed the 124 kettlebell?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 124. Cool. Yeah. It's actually one of the best bells to two-hand pass. It's an 8er, and it's got like a super thick handle. So some of the weight is distributed in the handle, and it actually makes it flip really well. Almost to the point where it's easier than like passing a bulldog or a beast even.
Rad. I think at the workshop I joked with my buddy who was there, Zach, and I was pointing to it was either a 60 or an 80-pound kettlebell. I'm like, do you want to pass this? And then you heard me, and he's like, what? And then you were there, and you're like, I'll do it. And I'm like, oh shit, all right. But we did it.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things I noticed was, regardless of the weight,
yeah,
at least to that degree, once you got into the flow, it was the same.
Yeah.
That pass, two-handed pass back and forth, was the same with a 12 kilo or 80-pound.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're doing it well and you're doing it right, it should be pretty similar. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just become, stillness. I experienced the just stillness and just like, oh, it was just very simple. This was going back and forth and there was nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. People at workshops often will say like it's very zen. Um,
Yeah.
I've had people say it's like prayer. Uh, Other people say it's meditative. So it definitely has that, I don't know, calm in a storm effect or whatever you want to call it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned you moved to a monastery in 2012.
I did. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your background in terms of the fitness industry, and
Uh,
then moving to the monastery, if you don't mind.
yeah. I got my degree in kinesiology from San Diego State in like 2002. And then I worked in San Diego in the fitness industry for a couple years. And then my first stint at the monastery, I first moved there in 2004, but I was only there for 6 months. And I was there um, basically as the trainer for the monks, which was pretty rad because I trained monks in the morning and then I had the whole afternoon off. And the monastery is on 880 acres of pristine redwood forest.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had a lot of free time to play with kettlebells and a lot of free time to explore the wilderness, which is invaluable for me. But that's neither here nor there. So in 2012, so we're talking about my history. So yeah, so then I came back out in 2005. 2004, I did that presentation with NSCA. 2005, I ended up doing a little bit of kettlebell coaching in Palo Alto with Mark Rifkin. And then from there, I ended up moving down to LA, and I was like, all right, well, I'll move down to LA and see what I can do down there. And I got a job at, well, that's when I met Robert, and I got a job at Gold's Gym in Venice, which wasn't really a job. I just worked for a dude who had training clients, and, you know, he paid me under the table to help him with his excess clients. So, you know, call it a job if you want, but technically it wasn't. And then I ended up actually having like a really fortuitous series of events that led to a Craigslist ad that ended up getting me a job at 20th Century Fox, which I've expected that. Yeah, so I ended up working at 20th Century Fox, which led to a job at Paramount Pictures, which led to a job at Disney Studios. And I realized I was gaining a bunch of weight, but nothing was really different, other than the fact that I was spending like an hour a day plus in traffic in the morning and in the afternoon. So it was like,
Was the job fitness related?
yeah, I was I guess, what do you call it? I was a trainer for executives.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And then I decided I would go to survival school. So I ended up going to survival school in Utah, and decided I was just going to move from LA because, you know, I tend to be a bit of a gypsy. So I just kind of was like, yeah, I'm done with LA. But while I was on my way out to survival school, I got a call from a place that I had put my resume in months earlier that I'd totally forgotten about. Excuse me. It seemed like it would be a cool thing to do. They were looking for a hike leader in the Malibu Mountains. And I was like, shit, if I can get paid to hike, that's great. So it turns out that it was the Biggest Loser resort in Malibu. But when I applied for the position, it didn't say, it just said hike guide Malibu or hike leader in Malibu. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome.
Wow.
So I responded while I was on my way out to Utah, and I was staying with a friend and her father in a place called Hurricane, which is right near a little town called St. George. And I called the guy who asked me, or who had told me he wanted to interview me. And I said, well, I'm on my way out to survival school. You know, I'll be gone for 14 days. On the other side of it, I can, you know, maybe come back and do the interview. And he says, where are you doing survival school at? I said, Boulder, Utah. And he goes, oh. He goes, that's not too far from our headquarters. I said, well, where's your headquarters? St. George. I'm like, really? Well, I'm in Hurricane right now. So we set up a interview. A couple days later, I went and met him, and he was like, yeah, I think you would be a great fit for a hike leader and the hike leader in Malibu position. When you get done with survival school, we'll have you, interview and, talk to them, and they'll make the final decision. He said, but pretty much you have the job. And I'm like,
Got it.
yeah. So I did the survival school thing and went back to Malibu and ended up having that conversation, and I got hired. So
What quick question? What does survival school entail?
So survival school, the course that I took, so it's through an organization called Boulder Outdoor Survival School, and they run wilderness survival courses, 7-day, 14-day, and 28-day courses, and basically each course is a little bit different. But the 14-day, it's like 3 days of what they call impact, and impact is basically what it sounds like: extremely difficult, challenging, hiking through the wilderness with, basically the clothes on your back and a knife. And then after impact, there's what they call like a base camp type thing, and that lasts for a couple days. And then the rest of it is navigating from point to point. So you learn how to make fire, find water. You learn how to use a compass, how to navigate with a map, how to build debris shelters. Basically how to survive in the desert. And
Wow.
yeah, it just depends on the course, but it's definitely worth checking out if you're at all interested in survival.
I am interested in survival and surviving. Maybe not. I don't know about those extreme circumstances. Did you ever have to use what you learned there?
Like after I was there.
Yeah. Did you ever find yourself in a situation where you were like, oh, okay, I got to rely on these?
Not a sketchy situation per se, but there's definitely been situations where I'm like, oh, glad I have this training because I know what to do here, but nothing like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I have to apply these things.
Yeah.
Hey, I know how to tie a knot, so I can string my bear bag up and feel safe or feel good about it, or something like that.
Very cool. I learned how to tie a few knots from sailing years and years ago. My dad had a boat, but I don't remember any of them.
There's a great knot app on
Is there?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I use it all the time.
What's it called?
Hang on, I'll tell you.
All right.
It's like 3D. I think it's 3D knots. Yeah, 3D knots.
Cool. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, 3D knots. Check it out. It's super cool. Like it'll show you like the travel of the rope and how it goes and how to dress it, and you can like watch it in different speeds and you can rotate it, and it's super, super, super informative and good if you don't remember your knots, because you could be like, okay, my dad taught me this or whatever, and then there it is. It's always at your fingertips.
It's great to know there's an app for that.
Yeah, right. An app for everything.
Yeah. Very cool. So you went to survival school and then out to Biggest Loser Camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I worked there for several months while I was going through the muscle activation technique program in Colorado. So I would travel back and forth to do that, and then at the same time, I was actually doing a lot of work with David Weck and hanging out in San Diego. So I was kind of splitting my time between LA, San Diego, Utah, Colorado, and then after that I decided I wanted to go to Alaska. So I spent a little time in Alaska with a friend of mine up there, and I got invited to come back to the survival school to become an apprentice, which I thought was pretty cool. So I did that the following summer. And that was a summer I ended up going to India too. So I went to India to visit a friend, and I spent several 6 weeks out there, and then came back and got hired to train a guy up in Alaska who needed to lose weight. So
Are they swinging kettlebells in India?
yeah, yeah.
Are they
Not
passing kettlebells?
that's that. Not yet, not yet. I have not brought passing to India yet.
Yet.
Yet it's coming.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. We did a 12 days of Christmas challenge this year, and there was a woman in India who was super on board and super stoked to be doing it. So you never know what's going to happen. Life's a trip.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, your Instagram has some really cool content. Very
Thank
educational, in-depth content. Definitely, I will plug that in the notes and definitely check it out. It's at Kettlebell Partner Passing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that feedback because I've been trying to like it's hard when you're at like a certain point in trying to grow something to know what information is relevant for most people or what most people want to hear, you know.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
If you have any feedback or if you have any insight in regards to other things that you think people would be interested in seeing, or if anybody who's watching this has any feedback, I'd be happy to hear, because to me, like a lot of the stuff that I do is just what I do, and helping people get started in it is, you know, it's been so long since I started that I don't really think about, you know, like the simpler stuff, which is why
Right.
like a lot
Right.
of the stuff that I posted, you know, recently is like super, you know, just like as basic as I can make it.
Yeah, I would say if you're a kettlebell coach or practitioner who's been using kettlebells for a bit and you really dig them, you definitely should check out Kettlebell Partner Passing. It's a whole new dimension, and you're doing a very thorough breakdown of fundamentals that
Yeah.
are there. That'll help it, even if you aren't teaching kettlebell passing or necessarily wanting to learn it. It's great content for coaches, I would say, or advanced practitioners.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And I was just scrolling through your account actually before we got on this. One thing I notice when I see you toss a kettlebell, it looks so effortless. Even and you may be moving around with the person, and with you the movement is so efficient. Uh, it just looks like the kettlebell could be a couple pounds, even though it's probably 53 pounds in
Some
some
of them
cases.
are.
Yeah.
Some of them are light, some of them are heavy. Just depends, you know. And go ahead.
There's just a stillness, and like you were talking about Zen and meditation, and you're drawn to the wilderness.
Mm.
Um, and I think I see that expressed in the way that you pass the kettlebell and receive the kettlebell. Were you always that way?
Always drawn to the wilderness, or
Did you always? So what I see is a stillness
yeah.
in you. That's what I see on the outside. So I guess, does that resonate? And if it does, were you always that way?
I don't think I was always that way. I think part of my journeys to the monastery and my returns to the monastery are about finding that stillness,
Mm.
um, centering myself in it, expanding it, understanding it. Um, I think I was definitely a lot more aggressive and you know, maybe excitable when I was younger. But I think the time and the different experiences that I've had, like in the wilderness, in survival school, at the monastery, in Alaska, um, they're all things I think have helped me to still myself and to give myself that foundation. Um, but yeah, that's definitely a quality I aim towards, and I'm glad that it comes across that way, because a lot of times it's, like a hurricane in my brain, but it's about coming back to the moment, and I think that's what the partner passing has done for me, is given me a practice that I can regularly do in order to bring myself to that moment and remind myself that, like, even when stuff's crazy and gnarly things are going on, I can still find that moment of presence and bring myself fully into it, and give myself that gift to experience circumstances and situations more deeply than if I, you know, tried to avoid it or dodge it or whatever.
Very cool.
Yeah. Hope
There's
that
a lot
answered,
of, what's that?
hope that answered your question.
It did, and then some. I mean, there's all these meditation practices striving towards stillness, but there's nothing quite like slinging a cannonball at somebody else to find presence in stillness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, I've moved towards extremes in certain things, and um, probably in an attempt to scratch that itch, of
Yeah.
what stillness is. Um, and those things, demand presence. They pull you into the present moment, and um, it's hard to get in like a more tame environment. But with the partner passing, you can create it. And then if you take that circumstance or situation out into the wilderness and you throw in the wilderness, it's a whole nother experience, because you become one with your environment. You're sharing the space versus trying to dominate it, or protect yourself from it.
Very cool. I think there's a big current of protecting oneself from the environment right now.
Mhm. Yeah, and what's funny about that is, by avoiding the environment, like, are we having practice dealing with the pathogens that exist in the environment? Like, are we actually
Mm-hmm.
making ourselves weaker? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what, I mean, you're strategically exposing yourself and your partner to stress
Yes.
when slinging the kettlebell. And that, I mean, appears to be valuable to building any type of resilience, you know?
I think so. I think when you can remain calm in stressful situations, I think there's going to be carryover anywhere. Like, it's not just specific to throwing a kettlebell.
Yeah.
It may not be a direct translation, but there's definitely carryover. But there's also carryover from those extreme situations that I've been in or experienced with the passing. There's carryover that way too.
The, what do you say people, what would you say if somebody begins this protocol? What can someone expect to get out of it?
Hmm. Um, that's a loaded question, Ian. um, you can expect a few things. You can expect to confront fear. You can expect to learn about yourself in ways that might be difficult to otherwise. You can expect, if you stick with it. A lot of people that I've taught this to don't stick with it because it's scary and it's hard. Um, but if you stick with it, you'll get freaky strong, but not just physically, but mentally as well, because you you,
Mm,
you have the opportunity to face certain things that otherwise you wouldn't. Um, you can expect to potentially have better relationships, because you're learning how to communicate in a totally different way. You're learning how to read people differently. You're learning how to read circumstances and situations differently. So you can expect improved communication. Yeah, those are just some of the things. I mean, a lot of it is individual based. So what one person might get out of it, another person, it could be totally lost on them.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will, you know, dive in and find all the jewels of wisdom that exist within the system, and others will, you know, maybe find one or two, and some people will be like, that's stupid, I don't want to do it. And there's something for those people too, but what that is, you know, for them to find, not for me really to tell them.
Very cool. What would if somebody said like, okay, I want to give this a solid shot, what would be a good dose in terms of like a time frame, a month, 3 months to and focus on this to get a good feel for some of these benefits?
So if you, I guess it depends on if you have a foundation or not. Like if you already understand how to use kettlebells and you're comfortable training with them, and you have somebody who knows what they're doing and who can share the information with you. If you put in a solid 3 months, I think you would have a pretty profound shift. You put in 6 months, I think it's safe to say your life will change. And if you give it an entire year, like an entire cycle of the sun, um, I think you'll learn things about yourself that you didn't know existed, and may even change your life trajectory, put you on a different path. Um, and I think probably for the better. It may not necessarily look that way in the worldly sense, but if I was concerned with the worldly sense, I would have done my life differently, you know? So I'm here to help people who want to go on a different path, who, you know, they look at the 9 to 5, or they look at, you know, just the way maybe their parents did it, or the way we're encouraged to do it, and they say, nah, there's got to be something different, or there's got to be something better. Those are the people who I think would benefit the most. I do think people in the corporate sector could benefit a ton from it, and I actually think corporations could benefit a ton from it, in the sense that if they used it in their upper level management, they could have some really productive meetings and time together. I think their creativity would spike. I think they would become more cohesive.
Better communication.
Yeah, better communication, and more in tune. Yeah, it's hard to articulate how kettlebell partner passing can affect different people, because I've seen it do a lot of different things. But yeah, definitely people who are looking for alternative are good candidates for kettlebell partner passing.
Typically, is there much communication?
Like while you're passing,
Yeah.
um, there's volumes of communication that are happening, but they're nonverbal.
Yeah.
When I'm teaching, or when I'm working with somebody who's new, I'll give a lot of verbal cues. I've had conversations. So to become an instructor, you have to pass an hour test. And the hour test is 24 kg, no stopping, no dropping, continuous passing. And the whole reason that I came up with that idea is I was passing with a friend of mine, and we were only passing a 16, but we just got into this flow really quickly, really easily. And we ended up just chatterboxing, you know, communicating about like things we were excited about and what was going on in our lives, and just, you know, stuff that you talk to a friend about. And eventually we set the bell down, and I was like, man, how long do you think that was? And he's, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes or something. And we looked at the clock and 50 minutes had passed. And I was just like, whoa, this is totally time warp. So when I was thinking about like instructors, I've been a part of a lot of different organizations, from Muscle Activation Technique to RKC to Strong First. And, you know, one of the common themes is a lot of times these organizations sort of rise and then the core falls apart because there isn't cohesion amongst the leaders, and other reasons too, but that's one of the common ones. And so I was like, I want to create something that, like, one, people are invested financially, but they also have skin in the game. And after I had seen that with my buddy Harinder, I was like, man, I think I think an hour is possible, but I think 16 is too easy, because we didn't even, you know, really bat an eye at 50 minutes. So I said, okay, well, maybe we'll make it really hard, and we'll do the 40 kilogram, right? 40 kg. That'll be brutal. And then I was like, that's absolutely nuts, dude. So I was like, let's scale it back. What about the 32? And I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? 24 is that's a good weight. It's 53 pounds. It's heavy enough to where somebody who's in great shape isn't going to just show up and be like, all right, I'm going to do this hour test, right? Or somebody who's even a high level kettlebell athlete may be able to, but most likely won't, because their hands are conditioned, but not for throwing and catching and releasing. And I don't allow chalk in my test. No chalk. You have to do it. You have to do it with your hands. So I figured, all right, this hour test will be, 24 kilogram, no stopping, no dropping. I think that's, something that'd be extremely difficult to do. But if somebody can do it, they're committed, And I tested it out, and a buddy of mine in San Diego did it with me, and I trained him for about six weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, he was able to do it. So then I figured, all right, I'd create this, 90-day protocol, and that's what people could follow, and they would test with each other. And anyway, to make a long story short, it didn't work out. And so I decided that we would find a different way to test people while still keeping the hour test. So that's kind of where we're currently at. How do we get on the hour test? I see the eyes moving.
Yeah, that's me. I'm thinking.
Yeah,
we're talking about communication over the hour.
Yeah.
I was asking, is there much communication? You said there's volumes of communication, not necessarily audible.
Yes. So the whole point of that tangent was, in that 50 minutes of passing with Harinder, we talked nonstop, but we weren't talking about passing, and we weren't talking about anything that we were doing. We were just communicating verbally. As far as like communicating when passing, if somebody's not giving you a good pass, you can say, hey, I need more, or would you mind, or please stop, this, that, or whatever. And you offer up a request. But other than that, I think more of the value is in the nonverbal cues that are happening back and forth, and then learning to read your partner's body. So when you throw me a pass, I catch it and I throw it back to you. When you catch the pass, your body tells me a story. So if I'm available to hear that story, the feedback that I get from the story I just received is, did I give you a good pass or not? If I gave you a good pass, your body won't say much. If I didn't give you a good pass or an ideal pass, then your body's going to do something to compensate for the way I threw it. And then it's my job to figure out, okay, did I throw it too hard, too short? Did I over rotate? Did I under rotate? Did I do some combination of those? And then correct for it in the next pass. So there's a ton of information being transferred, but it's, like I said, not verbal.
I like the nonverbal communication. I know I've used too many words before, just across the board, in describing things or expression, any type of expression. But taking language off the table but still communicating in that very vulnerable and high stress state. I see the value in a corporate leadership arena. It reminds me of a book called Heart, Breath, Mind
Hmm.
by a doctor who does Leah Lagos. She does breathing at a certain frequency based on the individual to manage a lot of uh, things like anxiety, depression, trauma, stuff like that. But they did it in a corporate setting where they had execs sit in a room together and just breathe at the same frequency. And a lot of the benefits they mention in the book are the benefits you mentioned from Kettlebell Partner Passing. Only I imagine yours is the step up from sit down and breathe with your coworker. Sit down, throw a kettlebell at your coworker.
Yeah. Well, I have noticed when you get into a good rhythm with somebody, especially in freestyle, you start mirroring their breath. Like you guys start.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it drops you into, for lack of a better way of saying it, is like a deeper and deeper flow state.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I wonder if the heart rates sync up at all.
I don't know. For one of the hour tests, I collected data with a heart rate monitor, and then for another one, we didn't end up doing it. But it would be worth, putting a heart rate monitor on two high level passers and monitoring them to see what it does. I imagine that's probably going to also be dependent upon their level of fitness.
Yeah.
So their level of skill, their level of fitness, their efficiency. But it would be interesting to see for sure.
Did anything stand out whenever you did that? Wore that heart rate?
It not really. I mean, it was pretty much kind of what I expected, like a slow climb, and then it just peaked, and it kind of stayed that way until the end of the test, and then it's like a very steep drop off. Nothing too interesting. I'm sure somebody would find it interesting. I just was.
Yeah.
I was hoping it would be a lot lower, like
Yeah.
but it wasn't. And yeah.
How many people have passed the test at this point?
Officially passed it, one, but people that have completed it, myself, Brandon, Mike Scott, Chris Hook, and Mike Vischer. So five people have completed it in some capacity, but only one official instructor.
Okay, that's the distinction. The one is an instructor.
Mike Vischer is an instructor. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Do you recommend a certain type of kettlebell?
I do, actually, depending on what you're doing. So like any single hand work or freestyle, I recommend competition kettlebells. So any brand of competition that is reputable and that's decent quality. For any two-hand work, cast iron, like the Dragon Door or Rogue or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Just as long as the window's big enough for you to get all or at least 3 of your fingers in it.
When you're doing the hour test, is that freestyle or is that two-hand?
Just two hands straight back and forth.
Okay.
Eventually, so right now we're working on kettlebell solo and KPP solo. So kettlebell solo is for the user, and KPP solo is for like people who want to become coaches and then eventually become KPP solo instructors. So we're building out the pathways now. So KPP, I lost my train of thought. Where were we? Or what were we talking about?
We're talking about the two-handed and one-handed.
Okay, two-handed and one-handed. So there's to answer your question directly, the lesson in this, folks, is that answer the damn question. And the question was, do you recommend a certain bell? And yes, I do. For two-hand work, I recommend cast iron kettlebells and the powder coated, basically the ones that you probably see at most gyms. And then for single hand work and freestyle work, I recommend competition bells, which is what you would see at like a kettlebell competition. You might
Cool.
find them at some progressive gyms, but like if you went to like a kettlebell sport gym, it's that kettlebell. But yeah, I like using all types of bells though, because everything. So the sport bell, because they're all the same size, they all flip similarly.
Mhm.
And the cast iron, you get a lot of different variation. So like, say for instance, a 12 kilogram powder coater cast iron and a 12 kilogram competition bell are going to flip in just completely and totally differently. And so if you only practice with one and you end up meeting up with somebody who only practices with the other, and all they have is the other,
Mhm.
and you're expecting it to be the same, it's not. Like the smaller cast iron powder coat bells, those handles come flying around way faster. So obviously throwing a cannonball is already dangerous, but the likelihood of you smashing a finger if you only use one versus the other is way higher than if you practice with both. So my spiel is use both. Learn how to use them both.
Cool. And
Yeah.
so say somebody's pretty proficient with kettlebells and they want to start practicing, do you recommend a particular weight?
I mean, that varies from person to person. Like
Okay.
a very general rule is 8 to 10 kg for women and 10 to 12 for men to start. But like I've had some monster dudes that I've passed with for the first time who, like, throwing a 12 kilogram bell is like throwing a paper airplane. So it doesn't make a ton of sense. So you have to use your judgment and be smart about what you do. But I tend to err on the side of caution, just because kettlebells already can be dangerous when used inappropriately. And now if you're taking into account that, like, you're launching it at somebody and they're out of control for 2/3 of the repetition or 2/3 of the set, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot more variables that they have to deal with besides just the weight. So lighter's better, and you can get a ton of value out of light weights. That being said, sometimes it's easier to throw with a heavier weight. A heavier weight will rotate more slowly than a lighter weight. So and that makes it easier to track and easier to catch a lot of times. So it's really dependent upon several variables: the level of the individual, their strength. Um, you know, if it's two people doing it, like, you have to play to the lowest common denominator. So if you got a big hulking man and a little tiny dude, um,
Yeah.
the big hulking guy is
Right
probably
on.
going to get less out of it, but he'll still get a bunch from the interaction and the connection. So yeah, man, you gotta kind of feel it out and figure out what makes sense.
Cool. So February 2021 right now, when we're recording this, are there live workshops going on?
Yeah, nothing
Okay.
live right now. Yeah, that probably won't happen until, I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, it's hard to say. Uh, but what's been cool about that is it's given me time to work on my online game, because
Yeah.
prior to last year, my online game was pretty much non-existent. So, you know, try to make lemonade out of lemons, right?
Of course. Yeah. So you have some awesome content on Instagram. Definitely check that out. If people wanted to learn more, what else do you have?
I have a free ebook that we just put up on kppass.com, kppass.com. And yeah, if you just go to the website, a pop-up will show up and you just put your email in there, and you'll get a free ebook on kettlebell basics. Yeah, it's, sort of like the bare minimum of what you would need to get
Mm,
started. And
cool.
then we're putting up content constantly on the site. Just scheduled, I guess it was 15 blogs over the course of the next until April.
Nice.
So yeah, so that's going to be coming out. Yeah, I'm just trying to get as much good information out, because I feel like people are asking like, how do we do this? And, and it's kind of like, well, it's hard to tell you how to do it,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do the best I can to give you the information I can. Cause really it's an in-person thing where like you get a transmission from the people that you're passing with. Like at the workshop you were at, you saw, you pass with all the instructors first, and then you pass with each other. So you get to see what it's like to pass with somebody who knows how to pass, and then you learn how to pass with somebody who doesn't know how to pass, and you see the difference, and then you get to feel the camaraderie and the connection and the communication and sort of the positive effects of it. So it's hard to translate that via Instagram and websites and things like that, but I'm doing what I can. I'm trying to get it out there. So yeah.
Cool. And I saw a solo book on your website too.
Yes. Yeah. There's we just released the Kettlebell Solo ebook, and that's pretty much, that's foundations. So it's a more expanded version of the kettlebell basics, and it goes into, basically everything you need to know to start setting your foundation to get to that freestyle place. So it's not anything that has to do with passing. It's all work that you have to do on your own. Because if you want to be a good partner, you have to take your time and go to your own personal monastery and do your inner work. So that's kind of the impetus behind solo. That was where I did a lot of my solo work, and it's where it's where a lot of growth happens. But you test that growth in relationship with people. So you get good at the solo stuff, and you think you're really great, and you think you learned what you needed to learn, and then you start passing with others and you realize, actually I'm not as good as I thought. So then, so the idea is we have solo foundations, intermediate and advanced. Intermediate and advanced is slated to record the video in the springtime. So hopefully we'll have that up by the fall of next year, but there's plenty to learn in the solo foundations. Comes with an 8-week program. So if you follow that 8-week program, by the end of it, you should be fairly proficient. So there's that. And there's also 7 moves to master for health and vitality, which is just body weight stuff. So even though our focus is passing kettlebells, I'm trying to give information that is applicable to all populations, whether they want to pass or not. So I've been in the fitness industry for about 30 years now. So I have a wealth of knowledge. My focus for the last 15 has been kettlebell partner passing and sort of the physical and metaphysical benefits of that sort of school of thought.
Very cool. Now's a perfect time to build that foundation by taking the solo program. A lot of people, all they have is their kettlebells, at home,
Yeah. I mean, I just finished the 8-week program myself last week, and there's the 8th week is a challenge, and it kicked my ass. And I've been doing solo work for a long time, but at the end of it, I was just like, shit. But the cool part about it is my 78-year-old mother also did the 8-week program, and she did the 8th week challenge, and it kicked her butt too. But she made it through and was able to scale. So it's pretty accessible to,
very cool.
Yeah, a lot of different demographics.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Michael, this is awesome. Thank you for sharing so much about your journey and about this really awesome movement and technique and really a lot more.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me to be on here, man.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about KPP or anything else?
Anything else I'd like to share about KPP? There's more to it than meets the eye, and you won't know unless you delve into it. And unless you are open to having some big changes in your life, this probably isn't the path for you.
Very cool. I like that.
Yeah. I want the people who it's going to resonate with to come, because I've shared it with a lot of people, and a lot of people have had good results with it. A lot of people had good benefits, but the people who seem to get the most out of it are the ones who are looking for something more. So if that's you, come find me.
Awesome. And how do we find you?
kppass.com. kppass.com. That's the best way. Or on Instagram at Kettlebell Partner Passing.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you have, is that a Kettlebell Partner Passing t-shirt, by the way? Peeking out. Let's see that. This is a pretty rad logo.
So real quick, the story behind this. So
yeah, let's hear it.
I have a friend who I went to grade school with from first grade on, went to high school together, went to junior college together. And he ended up going to art school, and he was always a fantastic artist. And when I started thinking about like, what do I want to do for my logo, I thought to myself, well, I kind of identify with a gorilla. I feel like I sort of look like a gorilla. And one of the guys I used to pass with, a guy by the name of Jeremy Layport, he sort of looks like a bear. So I was like, I'll commission someone to create a bear and a gorilla. And I thought, oh man, I'd love to have Jeff do it. So I reached out to my buddy Jeff, and I was like, hey, I know you're super busy with all the stuff you're doing. Would you be interested in, me commissioning you to, make a logo for me? And he was like, hell yeah, I'd totally do that. So he turned out a, sort of a proof, and I loved it. It was way more like the bear and the gorilla were way more detailed. It was more like just like a work of art. And so I tried to make that into a t-shirt, and I was like, yeah, it doesn't really work. And he's like, yeah, let's just make it more, graphic. If we make it more like graphic, then you could totally put it on anything you want and it'll look good. And so then he came up with this design, and here you have it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Are you selling those shirts?
I am not. No, I'm not selling.
You got to earn them. You have to do an hour.
I was selling them, but nobody bought them. So now you have to earn it.
That's
I just switched stores on my website, and on the old store, it had the t-shirts. Yeah. And I'm still in the process. There's only a couple items, but trying to, running your own business, trying to do all the things that you got to do, something slipped through the crack, and but if people are interested, they can hit me up, and we can figure out a way to get a t-shirt into their hands.
Very cool.
Or you can just earn it.
Or you can just earn it. I like that. I like that better. It's very, very exclusive. It's a bold statement. You've swung a kettlebell for an hour straight, 24 kilo.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's a whole nother t-shirt. Like we haven't designed that one yet. But I definitely think there's an hour club. There's a 200-pound kettlebell club, the 203 or 206-pound kettlebell club with a handful of people in that one.
Oh wow.
So that was a thought process of like, hey, we'll make that t-shirt too. But then I was like, do I really want to be encouraging people to try to throw a 200-pound kettlebell back to like, yes, I do, because it's amazing, and no, I don't, because I just think that, like, at a certain point, where do you stop?
True. Possibilities are endless.
Yeah,
all right.
Pretty much. Thanks again, Ian.
Very cool. Thank you, man.